Welcome back, everyone, to the Bank Customer Experience Podcast. I'm joined once again by these two wonderful gentlemen from the Cook Solutions Group, Michael Strange and Joey Parrillo. Great to have you guys on.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Excellent. So we're joined today. We're talking about a security topic a little bit different than before. We're talking about video verification. So right off the bat, that term can mean a lot of different things. So how would you all define video verification?
Video verification is the use of video surveillance to validate an alarm event. So confirming why a particular alarm was triggered, and then allowing you to respond accordingly.
We're seeing it used often and predominantly, and that's kind of why Michael and his team and the CSG staff has really bought in and dove headfirst into building out our own internal processes with video verification.
Yeah, so it seems like the main issue is we want to make sure that those actual alerts are real and not false alarms. But I think this is really a move from reactive to maybe more proactive security. So why is it critical for financial institutions to make that move to proactive security, in your opinion?
Well, the quicker your reaction is, the more likely you are to prevent a loss. And that loss could be an attack on an asset or the false alarm fees that you incur when your alarm erroneously dispatches law enforcement. So physical attacks on assets can take place in 10 minutes or less. And getting law enforcement to respond quickly nowadays is dependent upon it being a confirmed event and not just a standalone alarm signal.
Yeah, and to add to that, I mean, there's many legislations out there or police officers that won't even be dispatched to site without a positive video verification moving forward. So we know major metropolitan cities are starting to bring this on as part of their the way that they conform with their dispatch systems. Hey, has somebody verified the event? No. Well, we can't dispatch until somebody verifies it. So many times this is people may or may not have a positive alert on site, and without video verification, they don't have the ability to dispatch. So it's a huge benefit as well.
Yeah, it's a really great point, especially in large areas where there's just not enough time and resources unless they have something really solid. So, when there are false alarms and security or law enforcement gets sent out to these branches, what's the average cost of that false alarm to that branch?
We're seeing this increase pretty drastically as these jurisdictions roll out the requirement for some level of verification of an alarm event. The average is around $500, but we're seeing a lot more cities and counties increase that to $1,000. We've even seen several jurisdictions where just calling into the dispatch center, even if they refuse to send a police officer, they'll still hit you with a false alarm fee just for the phone call into dispatch. So even making the phone call and asking for a response could get you hit with a $500 penalty. And quite often those are compounding fines. So the first one might be 500, then the next one's 750, then the one after that's 1,000, and it just keeps going up from there.
Michael doesn't like to tout too much, but Michael, real quick, just can you throw out a couple like rough numbers that you may or may not have done some due diligence on of what we actually were able to save customers by video verifying
Uh,
on false alarms?
it's a lot. So just in the last 90 days, we've processed um, uh, over 1,000. Yes, so 1,800 phone calls have come in the last 3 months, and out of that, we've only dispatched 32 times. So if each one of those had gone through to law enforcement at $500 a pop, it would have been a lot. So tens of thousands of dollars of false alarm prevention with that Pico Verify service.
And I was curious, do you all mind talking about what are some of like the most common false alarms you tend to get from like banks?
This is my favorite topic. So, anybody in the financial institution space, their initial knee jerk is going to be it's either my janitor or my cash in transit, my armored vendor.
Hmm.
Those are the two that we always think about first. But after having, we're coming up on almost a full 12 months of our service being live, and the number one cause for a false alarm is actually the branch staff. So
Mm,
either the branch staff isn't appropriately trained on which zones they have access to in the alarm system, or they're just moving too fast to get open for the day. But by a pretty significant margin, it's the branch staff that most often triggers false alarms.
interesting. And I think you answered a little bit of that question earlier, but what's kind of the average ROI on video verification?
It would depend on the size of the institution, but it's pretty quick. Your break even is around one or two alarm events, and you've broken even. Because again, you're talking about $500 to $1,000 per false alarm event. So you just prevent one or two of those in the course of a year, and you've gotten your money back already.
I was going to ask, what are some of the operational challenges that come from having maybe a more siloed alarm and video system as well?
Joey hit this point earlier. The jurisdictions refusing to dispatch without some level of confirmation. Right. The days of my motion sensor goes off and law enforcement shows up to protect me are pretty much gone. They're requiring some other level of validation. So that really is the biggest challenge because now you know you get an awkward phone call while you're out to dinner. You can't just say, "Well, just go ahead and dispatch law enforcement." Like, you have to pull up cameras. You have to get some kind of confirmation if you want a response. So the biggest challenge is just really running into those new requirements from the law enforcement agencies. And in their defense, it's for good cause, right? Almost everyone has an alarm now. And they are dealing with a very significant amount of false alarms on a day-to-day basis with their limited resources.
And to kind of piggyback on what Michael was talking about earlier, is like not all video platforms have mobile applications. So maybe you are at dinner, right? And oh, I have to remember my login. Oh, I have to remember my what app I was using. Or to Michael's point, like maybe it's 2 in the morning and you slept through it, or hey, maybe it's 3 in the morning and your branch manager was having a good Friday night. Like there's a lot of things that could partake where our team is 24/7, 365, and your video verification team should have those allotted times where they have the ability to take those calls on and view the video for your team and make those decisions.
When and just the nature of the alarm system, this might be the first time the alarm's triggered in 2 years. So how often is your team actually responding to this type of event? And then they have to remember all of those things Joey just mentioned on top of it. And not even the video stuff, just what's the passcode for the alarm so that I can actually tell you what to do. Because ideally your team isn't going to be dealing with a lot of false alarm events.
Right. That can be very difficult when it actually occurs, as you mentioned, especially if they don't deal with it in the day to day like you all do.
Exactly.
So, you mentioned a little bit about your solution, Pico Verify. Can you tell me a little bit about that and how's it leverage kind of those existing security infrastructure the banks have?
Right. So, any of our CSG customers are familiar with the alarm panels. We primarily see DMP, and then our Pico Video platform, which is a fully featured video management software that you can use for all of your surveillance needs, not just for Verify. So in order to use Pico Verify, you don't have to add any additional equipment. We use your typical surveillance cameras to facilitate the service. We tie that in with your existing alarm panel, and then our team
Mhm.
fills in the gaps. So you don't have to add anything additional to be able to turn on the service. We use the existing hardware, the existing network connections, and then it's just our team that fills in that gap. We respond to the alarm events so that your team doesn't have to.
Obviously, there's going to be a cost to this, as with everything. So, can you give me maybe top three reasons to invest in video verification?
Speaking to cost, the cost and reputation savings with your local law enforcement alarm response. So the cost to Pico Verify is going to be less than that compounding false alarm fee potential. If you have a lot of false alarms going on, but more importantly than that, your institution's reputation with local law enforcement, because you get a police officer responding to your building for no reason multiple times in a month, they're going to be very less excited about responding when potentially something bad is happening. Not to mention the fact that you're stressing the resources for that local agency, um, and we've even seen some instances where that agency will blacklist an institution and say, hey, look, we're not responding to your alarms anymore until you figure this out. So just that in and of itself is really the main thing for Pico Verify. But you're also removing the after hours burden from your team, right? The example for Joey, nobody wants to get that phone call at dinner because my alarm is going off. And a lot of times your first instinct is, this is a false alarm, until it's not. And now you didn't take a situation as seriously as you should have, and because you're not used to handling those calls, maybe the opportunity to respond in a proactive nature is missed. So helping your own team not have that after hours or that kind of stressful decision making burden on them. And then another benefit that often gets overlooked is you can consolidate your team's security response to a small group of people at the global level that are familiar with your security profile. So your lead teller, your assistant manager, your branch manager of your local teams isn't making security response decisions, right? Our team will handle the initial call, make the initial determination, and then we're notifying your higher level contacts. So it's experts involved in the security response all around, instead of needing to involve a local team that maybe isn't as familiar with how to respond as they should be. So it can also streamline your response when a valid event has happened.
I was curious. So you mentioned kind of it depends on a lot of bank size, how many false alarms they get. But I'm curious, does this approach give community banks and credit unions the same security advantage as the big national players? Because that's kind of the question they might have is like, well, can this really benefit us and help us to compete?
Well, this is what the big financial institutions are doing. They're just doing it inside their own team. They have the resources to be able to have a group of people dedicated to handling these types of responses, and the smaller institutions do not. And that's what we're here to do, right? To take on that burden for these teams, so that you don't have to, and you can use us as an expert partner, and then we eat the training and the time and the 24/7 staffing. The part of the biggest challenge, again, to Joey's point earlier, is just having someone that's awake and coherent and familiar with this type of event, right? We literally have a group of people that are answering these phone calls every day. There isn't a single day that goes by that we don't handle an alarm event, if not dozens of them. So they're very familiar with how this works, and they aren't as impacted by the stress of that kind of emergency call from the monitoring center can be. So you get to have that large institution team for your smaller institution without most of the overhead.
Yeah, I mean, we're even seeing some of those larger institutions starting to leverage our internal policies, procedures, and Pico Verify as well because of what we've done, how much savings we've occurred. And then it allows their internal staff to have other obligations and duties that don't require them to watch a monitor, right? They can do other things during these times like updates or patch managements or anything like that during those times when they should
Hmm.
be updating or viewing the video, right?
Sure. Yeah. Great point. So we've kind of talked a lot about video verification. We haven't really talked about kind of some examples of how it works. So can you share some examples of video verification in action? Like how would this work in a real world setting?
Sure, and I have a favorite example, and Joey probably already knows the story I'm going to tell. But so we get the alert that an alarm has triggered at a financial institution here in the Pacific Northwest, and we pull up the cameras and are immediately able to see the cause. There is a forklift in the lobby of the bank, so obviously that is a suspicious circumstance. So not only are we able to confirm, with law enforcement dispatch, hey, this alarm is happening, it's not a false alarm, but we're able to provide the details of there's heavy construction equipment inside the branch. They're actively removing the ATMs. This is happening live. Provide that information to dispatch. And in an area where you typically measure law enforcement response in hours, not minutes, we see law enforcement on site inside of 10 minutes. They're able to arrive before the bad actors were able to get away with those ATMs, and able to recover the assets. Obviously, there was still some damage done to the infrastructure, to the building itself, but the currency inside the multiple ATMs, I think it was 3 or 4 that were in the lobby that were taken. They were all recovered. So that certainly helped reduce the cost incurred by that institution.
Did you have another one you'd like to add?
A little bit less exciting, where we had a customer that was incurring a lot of false alarm events, and they kind of needed a quick fix, and they were just
Hmm.
dispatching law enforcement a lot erroneously. And we were able to take that over, and they went from having several dozen false alarms in a month to zero. And not only did we handle preventing the false alarm dispatches, we were also able to identify a hardware problem that was resulting in those false alarms. So there's actually a sensor that was not behaving correctly, and our team's experience with both the alarm monitoring, the alarm hardware, and the video monitoring, we were able to identify this and make suggestions to get that problem fixed.
Yeah, and that's happened a couple times, right, Michael? Where, hey, I mean, and Brad, false alarms could be anywhere from a balloon moving across in their crawl space. It could be a spider web, right? It could be an animal, all of those things. But many times, Michael and his team have seen sensors just tripping, or a leaf blower causing the door to just move, that a glass break, or some. So there's so many things that Michael's team's able to rectify because of their ability to see the footage in compilation with these alerts, and then we go back to the institution and say, hey guys, this is the issue. Like, maybe let's not have balloons in your lobby all the time. Like, so
Right.
yeah.
And it's really the advantage of, my team has 1,800 reps on this type of event, and a local FI team. Again, maybe this is the first phone call you've gotten in 2 years about a false alarm event, so it's easier for us to see those types of patterns and go, oh, your ATM alarm went off the third time this week as a false alarm. That's probably your vibration sensor, and it's probably not calibrated correctly. That's going to be an immediate evidence for a hardware issue for our team, whereas for a local FI team, it might take them months to come to that conclusion. So again, leveraging that expertise on the team really comes in handy.
Excellent point. So I was curious, what makes Cook Solutions Group's video verification different from other video verification?
I think the biggest is it doesn't require any additional hardware or cameras, right? We're leveraging your existing Pico video surveillance platform, your existing hardware for your alarm, and we're able to make those two things work together. We've got the people that are responding to these alarm events aren't just a call center operator. It's also the same people that work to troubleshoot alarm monitoring issues and alarm hardware, as well as servicing the Pico video platform. So these are people that are familiar with the technology that they're using. They're not just another end user. They're the actual support staff for these different systems. And then that 24/7 coverage, right? These people are awake and at work and ready to respond to these events. Again, events that they have a level of expertise in, and not taking that one alarm call for the first time in the last 2 years, right? So this is kind of what they do on a day to day basis, and they'll be coherent when they answer the phone, right? You're not waking me up at 2 a.m. I was already doing something when I answered the phone. So there isn't that delay where I have to remember where I am or how to log into my systems. I'm already in there, right?
My last question was, is there any integration of AI plan for your video verification platform?
Absolutely. And being able to leverage these new technologies and these new alerts to help us, as you started off with, get ahead of the curve, be a little bit proactive, and leverage these AI tools to maybe give us an alert before the system goes off, right? Before the alarm is tripped, so that we can start looking at the area and planning our response in advance. So yeah, we're definitely working on those AI integration tools.
Perfect. Is there anything else you guys would like to add before we sign off today? You give us some great information.
Nothing for me, I don't think.
Just if you have any questions, please feel free to visit us or reach out.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much for this really fascinating topic. Thank you so much, Michael and Joey. Loved having you on.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you guys.